Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now, for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only, Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I'm here with my co-host, Patricia Kirkman. PK, how are you?
Absolutely fabulous. I haven't melted away in spite of the weather. It's 101 here today.
Yikes. Wow. Yep. Oh, my God.
Inside in the air conditioning, and that's where I'm staying.
Yeah. Oh, my. Well, I'm glad that you're all in one piece with that kind of heat. My goodness.
Oh,
so there's so much going on we have to talk about, and we've got a tremendous guest tonight. Lee Adams is with us, and we're going to be talking about the power of lucid dreaming. He's an expert in this field, and as everybody knows, this is one of our favorite topics, so we're thrilled to have Lee with us. We're going to bring him on in a little while. But for now, let's talk about our world in numbers, PK. What's happening?
Well, we are in a brand new month, and it's a two universal month, which is all about sensitivity, sometimes overdoing things, but relationships, partnerships, as well as issues with men are going to be top of the list. Also, this is a time we need to be the peacemaker. Don't allow the self to become the doormat for others, but regardless, stand your ground, but don't be nasty about it. You do have to pet the puppy, shall we say, so everybody's happy and gets along. Regardless of what your personal year is, this month is going to have a lot to do with emotions. And the way things are going with the retrograde, you can pretty well count that the emotions are going to run high. This retrograde does not end until the 23rd of June. So it's not a good time to sign or make any important decisions. Don't sign contracts if you can avoid it. Postpone travel when possible. Avoid starting new projects because they're not going to go well. Definitely not. And it's very important to be patient. Communicating with others is going to go, well, I won't say difficult, but don't expect things to go well because it's not what it's all about unless you happen to have been born in a retrograde. Those are the only ones that skirt by in a time like this. And the fact that the Mercury retrograde is in Gemini, relationships with the family and between friends are going to be the center of all things, both good and bad. So we've got to kind of pay attention to that. So as I say, we've got until the 23rd of June. But on top of that, remember we have a shadow period as we're going into the retrograde and a shadow period coming out. So although it ends on the 23rd of June, we still have that 2-week dragging us down when it's over. So just be careful of what you sign. Face-to-face is the best you can do when it comes to communicating. Messages are going to get lost in transpose, so it's going to get a little dicey. Not a little, a lot dicey if you don't pay attention.
Yeah, this sounds like a real powerful retrograde from what you've been describing.
Well, because the Mercury is in the sign of Gemini to begin with, and the fact that it's retrograde in Gemini makes it twice as much of an issue. As I said, relationships with family and friends are going to be the center of everything, both the good and the bad. And since it's retrograde, I'm looking more towards the negative than the positive, unless you're born in a retrograde.
Then it's smooth sailing.
That's right. The rest of the year stinks.
Funny.
You know?
Yeah, really. The rest of us are just going to scratch our heads and probably keep our mouths shut for the whole month.
Oh, yeah.
So
anything to do with communication is just going to be up in the air. Everything needs to be tweeted. our computers, our smartphones, anything to do with electronics. And let's face it, our cars are electronics now. We've got computers in those. And so there really isn't any place you can go that you're not going to be dealing with some issue when it comes to communications.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, everybody. So buckle up. We have it going on.
Take the ride
this month.
and enjoy it. And when it's over with, you're going to be thrilled to death.
Oh, yes. Well, it's time for the party then. Oh, my. Well, and we had such a disappointment with the Pentagon report that, of course, they didn't release. What is the holdup? I mean, come on. It's been, 5 months, almost 6, and they can't get the report together. They need, another 3 weeks. Oh, please.
Well, they have to learn how to read it first.
I guess they have to take off all of those redacted black marks from those documents and decide what they're going to share with us. Oh.
Well, I wonder if they hold it up to the light if they can actually see anything afterwards.
Yeah, really. But now I'm here. First I heard, we had Bob Luca on last week. He was a fantastic guest talking about all of this, first-hand experiencer, really knowledgeable about the whole field. And he said right off the bat, he said, I doubt they're going to have it out on the 1st. And he was right. Mm-hmm. Then we heard the 15th. Now I'm hearing what, the 25th?
Yeah,
but
which month?
Ridiculous. Yeah, well, that's right. It'll be after the retrograde, I guess.
People are stupid.
But it's interesting, people. I got to say, PK, I got to hand it to our audience and the people that are commenting about this because they understand what the government's doing. They really know not to trust anything they say. And I mean, if we look at all of what those pilots for the Tic Tac pilots that had those, they witnessed what happened, and all of a sudden they're scared. Oh, I'm so scared. Well, why? They've been flying around in our skies for thousands of years, but what are you trying to do? You're trying to set us up so you're afraid. Now we should be afraid. We don't buy it. And so many people get it. So many people know what they're up to, and they're very suspicious of anything that they're actually going to come out and say. So good for all of you that figured that out. I think that's really smart and good thinking that you're not just going to blindly go along with whatever. And so it'll be interesting when it finally does rear its head and we can see what it looks like. So, but for now, but you know what? We also, I have to bring up something that is just phenomenal in terms of viral marketing and somebody who has just made it big time in just about, 5 days, 7 days. You've been looking at the Whitey TikTok videos, Whitey 18 that I sent you. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh! I mean, here is this young man who has blown up TikTok, gotten this huge following in a very short period of time. Happens to be a really nice person too, from what I see. And it's amazing. It's turned into a global phenomenon with this young man and playing music from the 80s, lip syncing. And he's got all of these older women, younger women, gay men. It's just, and everybody's having, not everybody. Some men are very jealous, apparently, and trying to shut his account down, which is too bad. But for the most part, people are just having so much fun with it. And it's nice to see. Instead of the meanness, the nastiness, the people making horrible comments that you usually see on social media, there's a lot of people having a lot of fun, and I say good. It's about time.
Well overdue.
Yeah, it's about time we learn to use social media like that, and so it's been a lot of fun to watch, and boy, what a stellar career I think he's going to have. So it'll be fun to watch all of this change and morph into other types of media, but my goodness. So everybody, if you haven't seen the Whitey 18 stuff on TikTok, go check it out. It's a lot of the duets are just hilarious, and it's great entertainment. So had to say something about that.
It's nice entertainment for a change.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's time to have a little bit of fun, be lighthearted. And he did something so smart by using songs from the 80s that brought back great memories for people of a different time when things were a lot easier.
It was a calmer time.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
God knows we could use a little of that these days, couldn't we?
Oh, exactly. So a lot of fun to be had with all of that. So anyway, on to our lucid dreaming topic tonight, because this is power, people. This is where you can get real power in your life, and you can get it pretty quickly. And we've got an expert joining us tonight, Lee Adams. So if you are not already in touch with the power of your dreaming mind, well, listening to Lee tonight, he's going to show you the way, because it's time that you all learn what lies in the world of the lucid dreamer. There is so much richness. There is so much power there. It's a way out of the matrix. It's a way in to find out who you really are and to just face your soul. So Lee Adams is a researcher, and he has been practicing and teaching lucid dreaming for over 20 years. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology, and he's currently pursuing his Ph.D. at Pacifica Graduate Institute. He also runs the podcast Cosmic Echo, as well as the dreamer community, taileaters.com. And he has a new book out. It is called A Visionary Guide to Lucid Dreaming, Methods for Working with a Deep Dream State. Lee, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on with you guys.
Well, we're happy to have you here. I think we both feel very strongly about this topic, that people need to dive into it. So tell us a little bit about you and how you dove into it. What made you get interested?
Yeah, well, I was like a lot of people that I guess are interested in their dreams. I just, as a young kid, I had a great recall of my dreams, at least more so than probably the average person. And I spent a lot of my time annoying my mom with my wild dream experiences. And she was kind enough to kind of encourage me to look deeper into the meaning of those things. And actually, she was very religious, so she spent a lot of emphasis on the relationship to the Bible and some of the characters in the Bible, and talking about their dream experiences. So, as a young person, I definitely took that to heart, and I was like, wow, this is something in these dreams are sending me messages, and what is the message? What is here? So yeah, that's really like what got me interested in it, in that I had dream experiences and I wanted to learn more. And I also had strange dream experiences that I didn't think other people had, and I call those lucid dreams, and where I would become aware in my dream that I was actually dreaming. And so that was very different than other people's experiences that I knew. And so I wanted to find out what was going on. What are these things? What are these experiences? And so, it further on in my life, it kind of had this strange realization that other people really didn't pay attention to their dreams, because I always kind of did. And also, the mainstream kind of idea in science that dreams are just random information, that we're just regurgitating our previous day. I didn't find that true at all in my own personal experiences. And also, I never really looked at dreams that way before, and it didn't seem like it fit my experience. Dreams always had something to tell me, even if it was random and weird. I would think about it throughout the day, and it would be useful to me in reflecting on those ideas and those messages in there. And so, I had a relationship with my dreams, and probably not a healthy relationship, because I didn't know what to do with them, like there's no one really to teach me. So, it's a lot of kind of school of hard knocks, you're learning as you go in dreams in our culture. But it led me to continue to dive into this, to figure out what other people had to say about those experiences, further my experiences in dreams, and eventually, kind of get an idea what's happening.
Well, you've certainly started off on the right foot, having that incredible memory of your dreams. I know a lot of people struggle with that. And in your book, you actually give some ideas of how to help that along. And there actually are herbs people can take and vitamins and things. So we're going to get into all of that. So it isn't such a struggle for people, because truly it is a powerful tool. I mean, it goes beyond being a tool. It's something that indigenous people used to guide them through life. And
right.
It's something we're really lacking in this culture. It's another break in spiritual connection when you don't work with your dreams. So we're so happy that you're here to give us ideas on how to make this work better and how to inspire people to really start this journey with their own dreams. It is, if you don't do this, everybody, you are leaving power on the table, and you're missing out. So,
absolutely.
Lee, tell us a little bit about the kinds of things that you teach people to do. How do you teach people to work with their dreams, to remember them, to work with them, to understand them?
Sure, yeah. Well, first, I never really consider myself as an expert on dreams, just because dreams are very personal to each individual, in the sense that, you know, you're trying to have a relationship with a part of yourself that you really don't know. You know, in other cultures, you know, in other times on the planet, people may have had better relationships with their dreams and understood those messages more, because they interacted with dreams and the world in a symbolic way, you know, like a more in a different language, and would listen. So dreams, I think, during those times would speak back to people. You know, they would express themselves in different ways than they do today. So, you know, in today's culture, we don't really have a huge emphasis on dreams or trying to remember your dreams. But the more, you know, I think that's being, like you said, having a huge disservice to the individual, because they're missing not only another aspect to themselves, but they're also having this weird amnesia-like experience when they go to sleep, you know, which it could be a good portion of their life. And then they wake up and they're like, oh, you know, nothing really important happened during that time, so now I'm back to working, you know. So, and also the language that we use to talk about dreams, like we talk about our future hopes and desires as dreams, but then we as a culture kind of dismiss these nighttime dream experiences. So my question, you know, would be, how does that affect, you know, your waking desires, you know, your dreams in the waking world? But you know, one thing that people can do right off the bat is essentially have the intention that you desire to actually recall your dream, and really make that present in your life. Being present and aware during your waking time is very reflective of your life when you're dreaming. So often people will have like a dream journal or something like that to, you know, kind of reinforce this desire to recall the dream experiences. Other times people can use like what we call reality checks, essentially seeing if you're actually awake or asleep throughout the day, so that when you wake up when you go to actually asleep and you're in the dream experience, you may kind of bring in that awareness into your dream experience and go, wow, I'm actually dreaming right now. Oftentimes, like, you know, checking your hands multiple times a day, asking yourself, you know, with full awareness as much as you possibly can, am I dreaming or am I awake? You know, those are very useful techniques in order to kind of show your desire to have awareness. You know, meditation, things like that, awareness training throughout the day, that will also reinforce this desire to be present and to be aware, not only in waking life, but also asleep. So those are just some of the really basic techniques in order to kind of show your dreams that you want to remember them, show that you desire to be aware and awake, like why you're awake, and also be aware and bring conscious awareness into the dream space. And then you can have a communication with your dream. You can actually build dialogue, you know.
You're building a relationship, right? I mean, this is a relationship,
right.
and it takes some time and intention to build it. It's just like when you meet somebody, if you want a relationship, you have to put some time and effort into it. Same thing. But I have a question for you before you go on. You talk about looking at your hands, and I remember that technique in Carlos Castaneda's book about dreaming, and he talked about it at length. But why? Why does that work when you stare at your hands? Because part of that whole technique is that when you do that when you're waking, if you actually can do it when you're asleep and you're conscious, that's a big step. So why? Why the hands?
Well, I think in a way, actually using your bodily aspect of yourself is kind of a disservice to the ability to be lucid and dream, because when you're dreaming, you don't really have a physical body. Most of the time, people don't really recall a body. They kind of just are a point of awareness kind of going around. But then sometimes, you look down and you can look down and you can see body parts and things like that, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm me, I have a body and things like that. But really, like, the key element behind looking at your hands and other things, it's not just always your hands. It could be like clocks or whatever, external objects. They're really just being present, That's why, like, Tibetan dream yoga is really, Tibetan people, that are very spiritual, they practice lucid dreaming, and a lot of techniques are associated with being present while you're awake, So looking at your body, and feeling tactile, all the sensations of actually being in a body, being a human, looking at your hands and saying, am I dreaming? Am I awake? Those are very deep questions too, in a way, because it's like, are you awake? Are you dreaming while you're awake? Is being awake part of a dream kind of thing? So those are really like tickling, your brain in ways that you've never really done before, I think.
Right, because it sounds like what it does is it builds a bit of a bridge between the two worlds.
Right.
So that's very helpful,
exactly.
I would imagine, in doing this work.
Yeah. As you said, relationship building, I think, is a key element to dream work, because I don't look at dreams as a tool, as you implied. You said that they're not a tool. It's like having a conversation, and I absolutely agree with that, because I think treating it as another person, treating it as a part of you, treating it as something, to communicate with, to have communion with, I think is very important, because, you wouldn't treat your friend as a tool, like you said, like you have dialogue, you put energy and work into it, you show them that you want to actually have communication with them, and then your friend meets you, sometimes more than halfway, sometimes halfway. I think dreams absolutely meet you more than halfway. If you show the slightest bit of interest, there's so much energy built up behind the dream content in our culture, because it's been suppressed so much in our lives that it's just fighting to express itself. Sometimes, through some people experience like sleep paralysis and stuff. Because of that, I think it's such a high energetic buildup that it starts creeping into waking reality almost,
Yes, exactly. Well, there are some dream researchers that say that this is a dream. Even our waking reality is really a dream. So it's not a stupid question to ask when you're awake. Am I dreaming?
They're like nightmares, though, aren't they?
Lately.
Waking nightmares. Yeah, I think dreams have a lot of utility. People, I think today, a lot of people that are kind of against dream work or whatever they want to call it are very material. They want to find utility in things so they can use it to make money or better their waking life. Well, what I'd say is dreams are actually very like waking reality, in the sense that things don't work in waking reality the way that we think they work. They're actually a lot more dream-like in many ways. And also, if you see the dream and you can interact with the dream, you start noticing similarities to waking reality, and also people's attitudes and things like that. So psychology is a big part of the working environment that we're in, because we deal with other people most of the time, and people are very dynamic and confusing for many people. So, working with your dreams in that space absolutely has a great utility, because it builds empathy for other people. You can relate to them. If somebody's acting out or something like that, it's very dreamlike in that sense. So you can build a lot of tools from dreams, I think.
You can work out a lot of problems in your dreams. I mean, people have written symphonies in their dreams. Some of the great composers said that that's where they did their best work, was in dreams, creating these amazing pieces of music. But there's a lot to it. But what I've heard a lot from people is, I had the stupid dream last night. Well, I don't see any dream as stupid. It's the people having them might not understand the language that the dreaming mind is using, but it's a language barrier. It's not that the dream is stupid, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. I've had my own share of dreams that when I woke up, they made zero sense to me. I wouldn't call them stupid, but maybe I've used that term before. But there's something to be said about kind of throwing something away. It's meaningless. It's like, I don't really want to pay attention to that. There's more to it than what I'm giving off, and there's a lot going on there that I'm not ready to deal with right now. So maybe I just chuck it away as being meaningless, random information. Another thing you brought up is like the language of dreams. Symbolic language is sometimes thought of as a much more advanced language style than, say, the language that you and I use. It's very complex. It's deep. It doesn't imply that those things are surface level real, in the sense that we typically describe things as real. I think of symbols and dreams as bridges to more powerful things. They're like bridge gaps. They're building a bridge to you so you can relate to it and you can have a conversation with it. But in a sense, these are much deeper, powerful things than really that meet the eye as an image or an experience in a dream. There's much more to them. So, a lot of people have problems interacting with their dreams because of that language gap and the barrier. But one thing, that I encourage is lucid dreaming, because lucid dreaming allows for, say, you to bring in your language skills into the dream experience and have this communication between, say, dream characters, a dream environment, and really have a conversation in English or in your own, spoken language. So I don't necessarily mean that people will control their dreams in lucid dreams. Like that's not really in my definition. That doesn't mean controlling. It means just having awareness when you're in a dream experience. So that's why I really encourage lucid dreaming, because it allows you to start kind of communicating, have a language, and the dream will talk back to you in your language that you can understand. And then, you can start seeing other aspects of your dreams, other symbols in your dreams in a language, because you're starting to learn it, It's like if you went to Japan and you didn't speak the language of the Japanese, no one would really have a good conversation. But, if you go order food or anything like that, they put pictures on the menus so that you know what you're ordering, at least some sense. And then it has a word there, maybe sometimes in English, probably not. But you may pick up on the language and start learning to associate words to the pictures and build dialogue with people. And eventually you engage with them, and now you're part of the culture, and then other things are happening, to yourself, like how you dress, how you act, all these things that really you didn't expect to happen just from learning another language or another culture. So dreams are the same way. They express themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they
express themselves in such a way and allow you to grow. Yeah.
Well, and that's what it's all about. Our attention is always so external in our culture, and especially today. I know, PK, you and I have talked about this at length, about all of the distractions, look here, not there. It's a lot it's like I think you even said this, it's like our head would be on a swivel with all of these changes, this being a year of change, as you predicted, PK. So it's a lot to take in, and the dreaming mind, it can give you some respite from the storm as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
it's amazing.
It can also allow you to see, those distractions for what they are, distractions. You can look internally for some of the answers that you're looking externally for right now. We look to the news, we look to the media, we look at politicians, we look at scientists, we look at all these external things telling us things to believe, but we don't listen to our own gut, we don't listen to our own head, we don't listen to our own dreams, and to me it's very obvious why things kind of deteriorate at that point. Like creativity goes down, and eventually a culture kind of deteriorates on its own.
Well, and people are easily then misled. I mean, they are easily misled. If you don't have that deeper connection with yourself and the ability to reason appropriately and look through the veils that are being thrown out in front of you, you could just believe the hype and really endanger yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, dreams, I think one of the greatest lessons to dreams are, for me, is, what you see is not always what's happening. There's a lot going on behind the veil, as you called it, that's going on that you can start exploring on your own, but when you're told something, there's generally more going on there than just what that person's saying, and the same thing with dreams is you encounter something in your dreams and you see it as an image. There's a lot more going on there than just the image that you're presented. There's a lot of energy behind that that's really built up to communicate you a very specific idea, And it's so interesting that, we kind of take these waking experiences, scientists or whatever telling us things, and we know there's a lot of work and energy going behind that, and that's why it should be considered as important to us. But then when it comes to dreams and we see this image in a dream, this very well put together image, very emotionally impacting, auditory, visual, all the whole shebang, and we assume that just is random noise, like there's so much energy and information behind that experience that every dream is absolutely vital to what it's being told to you. It doesn't mean like believe everything the dream says, just as you hopefully wouldn't believe every self-proclaimed scientist that goes on TV. But I've never heard.
I mean, I've sat in many dream groups, and I have never heard a dream that really wasn't worth listening to. I mean, the dreams, in my opinion, they come from your soul. They're trying to help you, direct you, uncover things you might not be able to uncover any other way. They take you into mysterious realms if you have the self-awareness to do something like that, as Carlos Castaneda did throughout his series of books, and traveling through different dimensions and being able to hold your consciousness on point. I mean, that's a real skill. And with Castaneda, I will tell this story because I worked with a psychiatrist named Stu Twemlow at the Monroe Institute years and years and years, too many years to even count, ago. And he told me a story that Castaneda was working with one of the institutes in California, and they asked him to do a dream experiment, and he agreed. So they got 15 people together, and they said, keep track of your dreams, and if anything unusual happens, call the institute in the morning. So they kept track of their dreams over a period of time, and then one morning they all called in to the institute, every one of them, and they said, Carlos Castaneda walked into my dream last night and said, hi, I'm Carlos Castaneda. Please make sure you call the institute in the morning. Every single one of them called the institute in the morning with that dream. So again, that's the possibilities. Once you learn to navigate those areas of consciousness, I mean, they're endless. They're endless.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been in the position, like many other people, where I want to know if dreams are real or not, and use those words. It's like, well, what does that mean? Like real. But I spend a lot of time and energy kind of doing the same thing. Like, be like, okay, are these things real? Are they not? Are they able to affect reality, so-called reality, and all that? And I've had shared dream experiences too that are undeniably, for me, proof enough that I need to stop asking those questions. Like,
yeah.
Of course, that's how it works. So it's funny to look back in the past of who I used to be, and be like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I was doing that. Like really questioning this aspect of it. It's so obvious to me that dreams and reality are intertwined together, and of course that's why it happened that way. But,
well, yeah, because people say, well, I dreamt about a snake because I saw a show on snakes on TV, but that's
right.
not the answer, because how many other shows did you watch? How many other images did you see that day before the dream? Why was the snake singled out? So there's always a meaning to that. There's always a reason that the dreaming
Absolutely.
mind chooses one symbol over another, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's become, I realize that it's not my place to really try to prove things to people about their dreams or even waking experiences, that it's on the individual. There's enough data and information and personal experience, if they really want to have it, to get to the source of the answer for themselves. And I'm not really going to be the person that does that for them, You guys mentioned before, like the UFO stuff. I've encountered 2 UFOs in my life. One, I was a civilian, and I had a witness with me. And then the second one, I was in the military, and I had about 15 other witnesses with me. And so to me, it's never been a question of, if UFOs are real or not. The same thing as dreams, are they important or not? It's never really been a question to me, because I've had those experiences. And, it's something that happened. It's like, okay, there's no real debate in my mind. But, for a lot of other people, they will, fight these things till they're blue in the face, saying, like, dreams are meaningless. It's like, what does that have to do with it? What does that tell you about that person, And if they could have the self-reflection to go, like, why am I so against this thing that is, like, obviously happening to people normally, and why am I so against interacting with that thing,
Yeah,
and
why are they so skeptical?
Yeah, I think that shows a lot about who they are and their relationship to reality and their spiritual life and all that, all in the one. They're going through a journey just like you and I are, and that's their journey, is living through this life of being skeptical about everything, and hopefully they'll, come to the realization.
Well, they're just holding on desperately
to
one aspect of reality. It's not the whole picture.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
let me ask you another question. I'm going to take you on a side trip here with our audience,
Sure.
because this is an interesting one, and you said you'd like to talk about this. There is something called sleep paralysis. So tell us what that is and what happens and why.
So, yeah, sleep paralysis is kind of a confusing term, because if you look up the definition of sleep paralysis, it's essentially what it says. You're asleep and you're paralyzed. So there's a natural process that happens to every single person at night, well, most of us, is that when we go to sleep, our body puts our body to sleep, paralyzes it, so it doesn't act out their dreams. And the only body part that isn't paralyzed is the eyes. And that's why you see, like, people's eyes moving back and forth. But then some people may sleepwalk, and that's obviously they're not paralyzed, so the mechanism that puts them to sleep isn't working properly. But there's other things that are associated with sleep paralysis that you often hear about, and those are not just being paralyzed and not being able to move, which is terrifying in its own right if you don't understand what's happening to you. But they also have this thing called visitations. That's what I use, and a friend of mine, Ryan Hurd, uses, is visitations, which is essentially mainstream science will say that it's waking hallucinations. So you're essentially seeing things that aren't there while you're paralyzed and you can't move. And that combination together can be very terrifying.
Well, yeah, because a lot of people, and this is global, talk about the old hag, seeing the old hag, this woman with white hair kind of blowing in the wind, and it's very frightening. What is the old hag? Why that one that so many people see when they're paralyzed?
People do see different things. People do see different things. So you're talking about New Finland. In their culture, they have what's called hagging. Essentially, they curse people to have an older lady, show up and put them in sleep paralysis and pretty much torment them while they're sleeping. And it's very common there. So that's what they use. And but in some other places, not to discredit, the validity to that experience, they see other things too. And you can find other cultures around the world talking about sleep paralysis in their own way. Sometimes they call them different things, obviously, because of language and culture. But there are commonalities, cross-cultural commonalities with sleep paralysis and the visitations that they see. Oftentimes like a shadow figure, like Grim Reaper-looking character, and, dead people, people that look like they're passed away, or gnomes and all kinds of different creatures that typically don't show up in waking reality. So, it's a very bizarre experience if you ever have that. And some people, have these experiences very uncontrollably. They have them almost every single night, and they really kind of suffer with that. And they try to understand what that is, and it's so fearful and surrounded by fear that people don't really want to look at that. Like even the people that experience it, they just want it to end as quickly as possible. And the real solution that seems to be the most effective is essentially allowing the experience to happen, because in the scientific aspect of it, the paralysis, the body naturally is trying to put you to sleep. It doesn't want you to move. So right now, if you were in sleep paralysis, you're almost asleep. You're actually still partially awake, and your body is trying to put you to sleep. So if you relax and allow yourself to relax as much as you possibly can in that situation, your body will eventually put you into a dream, and you'll no longer feel the paralysis. Not to say that the visual experience of an emotional and sometimes physical experience of the visitation will go away, but you will no longer feel like you're unable to move. So, that's why I really encourage people to do is kind of first research, what sleep paralysis is and kind of the effects of that and what it feels like and all that. And then try to, if you experience it, to try to relax as much as you possibly can, because that will help you kind of assist your body in doing its normal thing, which is put you into paralysis and asleep. So,
well, I had an experience with the old hag once, and I felt something was, how you feel someone staring at you. I was sound asleep. Felt somebody staring at me, and I opened my eyes, and there was her face, like right in front of mine. And I screamed my ass off. I mean, it was so startling. You expect to open your eyes and see nothing, but here was this floating head. And it woke me right up. I mean, I finally was able to move, and I just sat straight up in bed.
Yeah.
So it was very powerful. But here's the other thing I wondered about, because a lot of people do have this experience. And like I said, it's not just the old hag appears in every country. So I think she's a guardian, because when you're in between sleeping and waking, and you're in between the two worlds, right? So to me, I was thinking, I bet she's a guardian. She shows up when you're about to move into another reality. And I don't know any more about it than what I'm just kind of, hypothesizing here. But I think she shows up for a reason.
Like a safety net?
Maybe, maybe to keep you from going into that other dimension.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone in that assumption. If anybody's read Rudolf Steiner's work, and he made a group called Theosophy or Anthosophy, he had this idea that essentially the visitations, he calls it a guardian of the threshold, and I talk about this in my book. And he implies that this guardian is there to really challenge you from entering into, say, past the veil, right? And so normally, most people are not aware, and they enter a dream, and they encounter it, and then they wake up. For people that have some type of lucidity, they're bringing awareness into the dream. They encounter these things often, and he implied that really it's there to challenge you and say, are you ready to enter this other world, to really engage with that? Are you prepared enough? And so he implied that, it's there to challenge you and to make it so that, if you're not ready, then you kind of take a break and do something else. Or if you are ready, and maybe that's the reason it's challenging you, let's say, then you have to kind of overcome that thing. You have to build a relationship with it and move past it in order to go into the threshold, which is the in between the veil of, waking reality and sleep, and then pass into that other dimension, say. I agree with
it makes sense. I mean, and PK, I like what you said about the safety net. Because that makes a lot of sense. Because I think based on what you just said, and Lee, what you're talking about, it seems that they're going to send you back to where you belong, unless you've had that kind of shamanic training that allows
definitely.
you to keep your wits about you in these other realities. That's a tough thing to do. So, how many shamans have talked about this?
I had sleep paralysis, and I still have it ever since my first experience. But essentially, I wasn't really doing anything. I really don't consider myself ever having any type of shamanic initiation or like these skills that Carl Castaneda had or whatever. So I'm a pretty normal person, but suddenly, out of nowhere, I started encountering sleep paralysis with visitations almost constantly. So much so that it was disrupting my sleep for work, and I was getting really upset, because it was just destroying my life. And thankfully, I had the internet at the time, and I researched, these things, like what is happening to me. This thing's visiting me each night and just tormenting me. And, I read eventually that you just have to face this thing and you have to overcome it. And I was like, well, I don't know what that means, but I'm so sick and tired of this thing attacking me every night because I can't sleep that I'm just going to try it, And I think being so tired and just sick of it that it pushed me to the edge that I finally was like, I'm doing this, And I ended up, having it attack me again, and then and I fought back essentially, and it went away. And it's in my book too, much more detailed. But the long gist of it is like that each of us, these are terrifying experiences for most people, like really scary. And so it's not an easy thing to say, oh, you just gotta, get over it. You gotta just work through this thing. It challenges you to the core, as you probably experienced, And so it's not something easy. And it takes everything that you have to really face this thing and move past it. And however you do that, is your way of doing it. But, if you fail the challenge, let's just say, I don't think there's such thing as failure in this space, but if it's not the right time, don't feel bad, because there's countless people out there that also have these experiences that aren't really talking about it. And, and each one of us is being challenged in our own way. And, my goal is to hopefully help people kind of assist them into getting over that hump, or to at least acknowledge what's happening to them so they can understand it in some way.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was taught many years ago about any tough time in your dreams where you're scared, you're being chased, that you can call on your dream allies, which would be people in this reality that you trust. And you could just ask them in this reality, would you be my dream ally? So if I get into trouble in my dreams, I can call on you. And I've seen people do that very successfully, so that when they're caught in a dream between a rock and a hard place, they call on their dream allies, and their dream allies show up to help them.
Definitely.
And isn't that a great technique? I love that one.
Yeah, I think it'd be very useful for people. Unfortunately, you know, it's not something that I really believed in, you know, or even thought as an option for most of my life. So I spent a lot of time struggling by myself in these experiences, trying to fight them or whatever. But you were talking about the importance of transformative dream experiences, and I think I have an example of that in a sleep paralysis like visitation experience that really changed me as a person. I'd be glad to tell your listeners about it if you
let's
like.
hear.
Yeah, so you know, I was encountering, ever since my first sleep paralysis experience, I was encountering visitations pretty often with different beings or whatever, and in many of those cases, I would fight them off. You know, I would physically, in the dream, attack these things, and I was very proud of myself for that. Which, you know, looking back, it's not exactly a proud thing. But you know, I was in a Buddhist class at the time, so I went and told my teacher. You know, I was trying to impress him, to be honest, and I told him about my dream experiences and me having these crazy dreams and me fighting off these things and all that. And he just looked at me with such like sadness. He was like, "Why would you fight your dreams?" And he's like, "Why don't you just sit down and have a conversation with them?" And I was like, "Oh, what?" And so it was pretty strong slap in the face, you know. But I went home and I took it to heart, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna try this." So the next time I had a visitation, I had lucidity, and I opened my door to my room, and I walked down the hallway, and I had that feeling that you're describing of kind of the eyes watching you, you know. Mm-hmm. And I turned around, and sure enough, you know, there's the thing, the dreaded thing, and it just happens to be a zombie at that time. And so I was like, "Oh, here we go," you know. Zombies are my favorite. Terrify me as a child, you know. And so this zombie comes walking down the hallway, and I know that it just wants to eat my brains, because that's the zombie that I saw as a kid, you know. And so I bowed my head down to the zombie, and it took a giant chunk out of my head, and I felt everything, you know. And I just didn't move, and I was just like, you know, I know this is a dream. I know the zombie, you know, is whatever, and I'm just going to let it do its thing. And so it did its thing, and then suddenly it was quiet, just absolutely pure quiet. And I look up, and the zombie's just staring at me, and I go, "Hey, you know, let's sit down and have a conversation." And it's like, "Okay." And so it sat down with me, and I go, "What's wrong?" And it said, "I'm unsatisfied." And I go, "What are you unsatisfied about?" And he said, "I'm unsatisfied." And as it was doing this, I noticed that it wasn't a zombie. It was actually a copy of myself. And I was like, "Wow, this is weird." And then down the hallway, I see another creature, you know, walking towards us, and it turns out to be another zombie. And I go, "Hey, sit down with us," you know. And so there's the three of us sitting down, and they turn to each other, and they pull out wires from their stomach, like electrical wires, and they like exchange the wires together, and then they merged into each other, and then they merged into me, and I immediately woke up. Now, I can't for the life of me really tell you at the time, you know, what that dream was about. I was like, that was weird. But throughout my life, you know, I started looking at the images of that dream and what that could have meant, and really, you know, built a relationship with that dream experience after the fact. And I realized how much healing actually occurred in my life during that period of time without me really being aware of it. And, like the image of a zombie is very powerful in the fact that it said it was unsatisfied, because zombies, as we know, are unsatisfied creatures. They devour, they're consumers to the extreme. They can't stop, eating and devouring things, and they're never happy. And it's like, oh, this is an aspect of myself, and also the fact that I was kind of divided into different fragmented pieces of myself, and then those things uniting back into themselves and then uniting to me and changing too as they were doing that. That is a deep experience that I can't even put into words, from the results of that. So that was a very transformative dream, and it really changed my perspective on the importance of looking at dream experiences as real, not attacking everything that's there, as an aggressive monster because they see you as monsters, and really listening to them, what they have to say, because in this case, there are aspects of myself, they were fragmented pieces of myself that really, I wanted to engage with. It just makes me, think about all the times and all the images and everything in the dream that, you're really discrediting if you say they're not important. They could be aspects of yourself that you're discrediting too, Say it's all in the mind. Well, what aspects of your mind are you just throwing away as trash when really, it's they're really wanting to engage with you and possibly heal from,
And that is, in fact, the shamanic way into how do you reach that level of enlightenment, by accepting every single part of yourself. So that makes the big difference. But that's a very powerful experience that you had that, like you said, it changed you for the better. And this is the kind of thing people are missing out on if they don't delve into this a little further. So give us some other ideas on how to become aware in our dreams, how to actually do lucid dreaming. Now, we've seen machines advertised, little lights. I mean, does those work? Does that help? There's herbs we got to get into all of that stuff. So what do we do?
Yeah. Again, I'll go back to what my Buddhist teacher said in one of my papers I wrote for him. He wrote on the top KISS, and it really was confusing what he was trying to say to me at the time because I didn't understand that acronym.
Yeah,
and I thought he was trying to hit on me. I honestly thought he was trying to hit on me. I was like, what is going on here? But after a friend was like, hey, dude, stop being stupid. I was like, what? And he was like, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I was like, oh, geez. Oftentimes, the more complicated we make these things, the more complicated they get, and the less we're successful in them. So I go back to the basics. All the, expensive stuff that you can buy in line, most of that stuff I have bought and tried, and some of them worked, but some of them also didn't really work for me. So it's really on the individual, but we have the tools available to us without all these expensive gadgets and stuff to really engage with our dreams naturally, and it's very easy if you keep it simple. And so I go to the research, right? The research shows that there's 2 techniques that are the most effective. There's lots of different techniques, and some of these techniques that you find on the internet may work really well for you, as they do for some other people. But the research shows that the most effective ones are like it's called Wake Back to Bed. Wake Back to Bed and Mild. And Wake Back to Bed, essentially, you go to sleep, you get your normal rest for the period of time that you normally rest, but then you wake up for a period of time and then you go back to sleep. That's really it. And for a lot of people, that can be really challenging because when you wake up, your body wants to wake up and go do the things that you normally do for the day. So, a good technique to use with that is kind of sleep for a shorter period of time than you normally would, and you're still a little tired, when you wake up. Stay up for a period of time. I stay up for around 60 minutes or so, and then I go back to sleep. And it works very well for me because I naturally can easily go back to sleep if I lay down on the bed, and I could take naps and stuff like that. But some people, that's really challenging. They need additional assistance. But the main thing with that
some people, they can't. Once they wake up, they can't get back to sleep. So
right.
it's a bit of a risk. Yeah.
And I have definitely been there. Sorry, go ahead.
I said it's very difficult. Like I was up at 3:30 this morning, and I could not go back to sleep. I would start to doze off, and I would automatically right back up again.
Oh yeah, I've been there many times. So, and it's not like it's not like a consistent thing too. Sometimes, like sometimes I'll go to sleep, then I'll wake up, and then I start thinking too much, or whatever. Things start popping up, phones ringing or whatever is going on, and suddenly I'm done. There's no going back to sleep for me. And even sometimes I've laid there for long periods of time without going, thinking I'm going to fall asleep. I've sat there and been like, this is never going to work. I'm never going to sleep. This is why I'm wasting my time. I should just get up and go do some things. But then at the moment where I'm like, this is not going to work, I immediately start having the sensations of falling asleep. And it's kind of weird because most people don't really experience what it feels like to fall asleep being awake. And so, but once you experience it once or twice, then you kind of understand the feeling and you're like, okay, my body's naturally putting me to sleep and now I'm going to start dreaming. And you get to have that whole experience, which is very unique. Another technique, which is very useful and more useful, I think, for people that have the problems going back to sleep, like you may, is the mild technique. And the mild technique was created by, or at least said to be created by Stephen LeBerg, who is one of the main people associated with proving lucid dreaming exists in their research. And the mild technique is essentially kind of like to wake back to bed, but in this case, you're going to go to sleep, and then you wake up in the middle of the night due to having a dream or whatever. Most people wake up a few times at night, and you just be kind of aware of that waking up process. They're like, oh, okay, I'm awake. I'm going to remember being awake kind of thing, right? So you're waking yourself up a little bit by doing that. And so then you're going to recall the dream that you just had as if you were lucid in it. So let's just say I was riding a bike in my dream, and that was all that was happening in the dream. I was riding a bike and I was talking to people in my dream, and I wake up and I remember that dream. I'm like, okay, I obviously wasn't aware. I was playing the character of me riding the bike and talking to people and doing that whole thing. So, but now I'm going to imagine what I would have done if I was lucid in that dream. So I'm riding the bike, and suddenly I get awareness. I'm like, oh, I'm dreaming. What am I going to do? Maybe I fly or something like that. Maybe I get off the bike and I go talk to the characters in my dream. I'm like, oh, what do you have to say? What are you thinking? That kind of stuff. And then while I'm thinking that, I'm going to go back to sleep now. So I'm laying there and thinking about this dream as if I became lucid, and now I'm going back to sleep with the intention of having a lucid dream. So I'm like, I'm going to have a lucid dream, and I'm remembering the last dream as if I was lucid. This, I think, it works very well based on the research. And I think the reason that it works so well is because, like you both brought up before, this bridge between the dream world and the waking world, and you're showing how you interact. You're kind of talking in the language of the dream by remembering the last dream, and then you're putting your own language in it, saying, I want awareness in it so I can communicate, I desire to communicate, and then you go back to bed, and hopefully your next dream will be lucid because your dream's like, I know your language, let's have a talk, So I think that's what's happening, but obviously no one really knows for sure, right?
Yeah. That's
but those two techniques
it sounds like
an
easier technique in some ways to use to induce lucid dreaming.
Yes. for some people it's very, one is more effective than the other. I was in the military for quite a long time, and so it wasn't uncommon for me to wake up really early in the morning and then go work out in the military. But I was always the person that liked to take naps right after that, so I'd get home, take a shower, and then take a nap real quick. And because I was, actually performing wake back to bed without really knowing it at the time, it was very effective for me. And then eventually I figured out why, But no, not everybody is a morning riser or forced to rise in the morning like that. And so in that sense, the mild technique probably would be more effective for those people.
Yeah, I think it's a little easier, a little more manageable. Yeah. So now you've worked with a lot of people, and tell people about your website too, and because you have a Dreamer Community platform. So what do you do there?
Yeah. Well, I created the website in order to hopefully share my experiences with other people, as well as like my research that I was going through. Really just trying to figure things out, and I wanted to have like a historygram of what was going on with me at that time, and also like kind of take other people through this journey that I'd hopefully end up on the other side a better person than I was when I started. So that's why I started it. It wasn't necessarily to make a community or anything like that. It was just like a way to display information. What has kind of morphed out of that is like communities. And one community is very much associated with dreams and consciousness and stuff, and that's tail eaters. And tail eaters is represented by the Ouroboros, and tail eater is actually a word that Carl Jung used to describe the Ouroboros. And oddly enough, I found that out after the fact that I made the website, made all these for years, Yeah, so it was pretty surprising to actually see, Carl Jung called the Ouroboros a tail eater. And that kind of, drove me to understand this relationship to symbolic meaning, universal symbols, dream symbols and stuff like that, and what's going on with that. But, so the website it has tons of information on it but it's not just dream-based. It has stuff on psychedelics, consciousness, symbolic understanding of images and things like that. And then obviously a large emphasis on dreams in there as well. And there's guest posters that I have too that post their articles on there as well. And then there's a Facebook group and also like a Discord, kind of a new chat system that people use, where people can talk about their dreams and these deep experiences that people have. And there's like a very diverse group of people on there because some of them are more material scientists trying to find out things, prove things or whatever. And then there's much more people that are, very spiritual healers, people, have astral projections and all that stuff. So it's very diverse, but oddly enough, we, for the most part, get along. And I think I've learned a lot from these people. And really, my desire to get people together was to learn from them and to listen and really see what they, listen to their experiences and try to see what they experience, through their eyes. And that's really helped me grow in ways that I never expected. So, I obviously keep it running, and not so much for myself, but I realize it's such a powerful helper, for people that go through it, and everyone there seems to really enjoy it. So
that's great.
That's pretty much my main stuff there, yeah.
Now, talk to us about, you have this written in your book, the things that we can consider taking. Obviously, check with your doctor first, the drill. But there are herbs and vitamins and things like that, amino acids that people can take to help them with better recall and to help them become lucid. So what are they?
Yeah, supplements, what we call supplements, drugs, etc., all change our consciousness and also our experience of waking reality. So it would make sense that they affect our dreams as well, and they absolutely do. And so some supplements suppress certain stages of sleep, like REM and things like that, so that you can encounter what's called REM rebound. And then, and since the science suggests that the more REM that you have, the more dreaming that you're having. So typically, when we go to sleep, we kind of come in and out of this REM stage as we progress through the night. But as we continue to sleep more throughout the night, the REM stage actually increases over time. And so another thing, too, is that if you suppress REM, for whatever reason, REM will rebound later when the suppression is no longer there, and that means that it will increase. But it also increases with interest. And so that means that it requires the amount of REM that you would normally get plus more. So you're really like getting a lot of REM with those things. So some supplements are useful in that sense that they kind of suppress REM for a period of time and then allow it to kind of unload on you, and then you have a better chance of becoming lucid because you're actually in a dream state, and you also have a better chance of remembering it because you'll probably wake up near some time that you're in the dream because it's at the end of the or early in the morning, you know, when you typically wake up.
Well, you have a nice list here of a lot of things people can consider taking. One is melatonin, which really surprises me. Why melatonin?
Well, melatonin helps a lot of people go to sleep. So it's very useful in the sense that it's useful in the sense that it's assisting your brain into producing the chemical processes that normally would happen if you had enough melatonin. Oddly, you know, our culture is very light-based, so at night when we're supposed to be asleep, we like to stay awake. So melatonin isn't produced as much because melatonin is produced in the pineal gland, and the only way that it's ever activated that starts producing melatonin is through the absence of absolute light. So if you even have a night light in your room, and even any light that comes through your eyelids, even with them closed, can be enough to stop the pineal gland from producing melatonin. So most of us fit in that category based on all the electronics we have going on in our house.
All these lights on.
Yeah, so melatonin would be a great supplement to supplement your already defective melatonin levels. So that's why I encourage that.
Bad light reality here. What about this one? Am I pronouncing it right? It's galantamine?
Yeah, galantamine. So I put a lot of emphasis on galantamine because I have a very love-hate relationship with that supplement, in the sense that it's completely changed my life. So if anything in your life has changed dramatically, I think you can have a love-hate relationship with it. But galantamine is really interesting because it's actually a memory aid. It's used in Europe as a medication that's prescribed for Alzheimer's. And for whatever reason, America, it's not a prescription. It's something you can buy on Amazon or many different websites.
That's even nice some Lucid for a change.
Yeah, nice for Americans, not so much for Europeans. But that increases the mind's ability to really recall things. So if you use it at night in certain ways, it increases the recall and also the awareness that you can experience in a dream. So I don't recommend people take that unless they're really trying to kind of assist themselves in having those experiences, because I think that naturally most of us can have these experiences without really taking anything external. But, you know, for some people, getting that little help, you know, I think plants are helpers, you know. They assist us in healing, assist us in changing your consciousness. And so they're helpers, but they're not something that I necessarily think people should kind of, you know, bank on each time and kind of abuse or anything. So, but galantamine is a very powerful plant. I personally think that galantamine is so powerful that it should be considered a hallucinogen, not in the sense that it makes you see stuff while you're awake, and hallucinate, but in the sense that it creates such powerful dream experiences that can sometimes be overwhelming. So,
and with that, now, do you take that like right before you go to sleep?
Well, no. You should take it in conjunction with Wake Back to Bed. And the reason for this is because if I'm somebody that can go to sleep easily, as I said before, but if I take galantamine, what's that? Sorry.
I said, lucky you.
I know, yeah. Well, lucky and not lucky. It's not so lucky in the military where I'm trying to stay asleep all the time, but for normal time, it's pretty good. But for me, even if I take galantamine before I go to bed, even with me, it's near impossible to go back to sleep. I have tried, and it's the most uncomfortable feeling, not just laying there. Everyone's had that experience where you're just laying there and nothing's happening, and you're like, I just want to go to bed. Now I can't. Now I'm up till like 6 a.m. just staring at the ceiling, and what am I doing? So not recommended to take prior to going to sleep. But
so when do you take it?
I use it in conjunction to Wake Back to Bed. So I'll wake up and I'll take galantamine, and I'll wait about 45 minutes for it to be very active, because there's a time period where it doesn't hit. Its peak time period is around an hour. So then I'm at its peak, and then I go back to sleep. And I can tell you, it's still really challenging for me to go back to sleep, challenging enough that it allows me to bring awareness into the dream without falling asleep. So in a sense, it's more like a shot of caffeine in a way, in the sense that it kind of amps you up, but it amps you up in such a way that's really more mental focus and awareness versus like your adrenal glands going crazy. So yeah, it works totally different. Yeah, it's a very interesting plant. It's derived from red spider lily or snowdrop lily. And if you look up those plants, there's a lot of interesting imagery based on those plants from the cultures they come from. Red spider lily is mostly like Japanese, and they put it on the burial, like the graves of their loved ones. And the culture actually, I think over time has lost the reason why they do that. They claim it's a poison, which I disagree with, and I think the research would show it disagrees with it. The same thing with snowdrop lily is like it's not edible in the sense that it's considered poisonous. But, we use it for memory aids. And then if you go to Europe and you look at the images associated with that, it's all these fairies and like dream worlds and stuff. And it's like, okay, I don't think I'm pretty sure these people were using it for very specific reasons with when they associate with these images, like not a normal image that you would see associated with like a plant. So
right.
They knew about it.
But you have other things also that people can buy, like right over the counter, like 5-HTP.
Right,
and
yeah.
valerian root you can get in any health food store. I mean, these things are pretty easy to get, right? Is there anything in your list that's so exotic you have to get it somewhere else?
No, nothing is really, some of these plants and stuff, you can grow them in your garden, and I would recommend doing that versus getting some chemical extract of it online. 5-HTP, you can eat fruits and animals, like eggs and stuff like that will increase your 5-HTP. There's lots of different things. There's plants that are high in 5-HTP. And these are all just precursors to, serotonin or acetylcholine, which are these neurotransmitters that are kind of doing different things to your brain chemistry and affecting your sleep. one instance, I don't recommend people do is, but we all do it, is heavy drinking, right? After a long party night or wine tasters, people, they go to sleep. And first they, generally feel very rested when they go to sleep. And then they wake up and they have wild dreams. And they're like, why did I drink so much last night, And really what's happening, there's a lot happening, but one thing science points out is that alcohol suppresses REM. So it acts a lot like 5-HTP would. And so it suppresses REM, and it also releases GABA in the brain. And so these things really affect your sleep cycles and makes it so essentially you're suppressing REM to the point that you start sobering up, and then REM just floods your nightly experience, so that when you wake up, you'll definitely remember your dreams. So I don't recommend people doing that, obviously, because it's hard on the whole entire body. But it's definitely an explanation to why people will have these wild dream experiences after having a heavy night of drinking or wine tasting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That is so
all
interesting.
these things are very common, I think plants, you can call it evolved, right? These plants have changed and grown over time, evolved over time to have a relationship with humans because we're the ones that cultivate it and move it around and things. And some of these plants have really changed in certain ways to affect us in very dramatic ways to affect our sleep because, humans for a long time were really interested in symbolic images and dreams and things like that. It's not until very recent, in our period of time that we've really kind of limited that. So I think, the type of plants that we surround ourselves with is kind of telling of our past and like what we really found important and how those plants affected us. And not just like our nutrition and stuff, but also our dream experiences.
Yeah, and I do think, our own electrical field makes a big difference, and how that may be compromised due to our environment and, other things like that. Lifestyle choices, it kind of wears that down. So the connection is a little bit harder to make. But, after the UFO sightings, talking about these magnetic fields, what were your dreams like? Did they change?
Well, the first time it was odd because I kind of imagined the event happening prior to seeing it, and I was also very close to sleep. It was late at night. It's probably like 1 or 2 in the morning when I saw my first UFO sighting, and so I was kind of in this liminal space, which is essentially the space between waking and dreaming already, having day dream type night dream, experiences in my mind. And then I saw the object. It was very closely related to dreams already, even though at the time I didn't really understand that. And but I can't really recall like if that really changed dramatically my dream experiences. I definitely had UFO encounters in my dreams and alien abduction type experiences with sleep paralysis and dreams. And oddly enough, I didn't really think too much of it. I was just like, oh, this is another, dream experience, as a young kid, And
right.
And then later on in life, I was in the military and I still, I still was very interested in dreams, but I was nowhere in the understanding I am today about them. And so I saw, another UFO experience. And right after that, looking in the past was pretty much when I started having sleep paralysis. Do I know if they were connected or not? I think everything's kind of connected. But, it'd be hard to prove, like, this UFO thing changed my dreams. But, I think where I am today, I'd say those experiences were very much connected. They changed me in ways that I possibly couldn't even really understand. Just, say you saw a UFO today, what would that change you? It would change your perspective of reality, seeing that thing. You're like, what is that? How is that possible? Like it's denying all the laws that we seemingly denying the laws that we set in place, and that's very dreamlike. It's like a waking dream. And if you read the research behind these things, most people would call them like shared hallucinations scientifically. They're like, oh, you had a shared hallucination. It's like, well, what do you mean shared hallucination? What does that mean? And they're
and also, so many people have had physical proof. I mean, you see burned spots on the ground and all kinds of other things that unfortunately we don't have time to discuss. But there's physical proof of a lot of that. So I was just wondering, because a lot of people say they are changed once they have an experience like that. You already were a very strong dreamer, and then this happens. So I was just wondering if it elevated the dreaming to a new level. But it sounds like it didn't. You were already there.
Yeah, I think they encountered me because of my connection to the imagination and dreams already. And in showing, in a way, reality is much more like a dream than you really think it is, and other people saw those things with me, and I think that's very telling too of like the experience. Here I am, a young guy, I don't know what's happening. I still don't today, but I didn't know what was happening in my dreams. I don't know what reality is. I don't know any of that stuff. And I'm trying to prove things. Well, here's an experience, that's very unique. I externally see with other people an object in the sky. They're military. They know what aviation stuff is. I worked in an aviation squadron at the time, and they were pilots, like they knew this stuff. And they experienced it with me, and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that is. And so it's kind of like an external experience of an internal thing saying, hey, these are real, and is that enough for you? And so, I had those experiences, and oftentimes, I found myself being like, is that real? Still, even questioning it then. And then I had to take a step back and say, well, what are you trying to prove to yourself? What is real, what is not real? Does it matter? Like, are these worlds intertwined together in such a way that you can't really possibly even understand, And I think that's the more likely answer, is that these things are so intertwined together that it's just one thing. It's not like when you close your eyes and you imagine something, that's a different experience, where does the imagination come from? Like, where do you think these images come from? Like, well, if you follow science, nothing's really random. So if some scientist says, well, it's just random images that just, like, well, where do they come from? Why are they generated the way that they are? All this stuff. It's like UFOs are just random. No, they're not random. They have purpose behind them. They have they show themselves when they are needed, and then they leave when they're not.
So they're much like our dreams.
Yeah, exactly. I think
they're much like our dreams, and that are they pointing out different pieces of information to us. I mean, certainly some of the experiences you've heard about on this show don't fit quite into that, but a lot of them do. But again, we want to thank you, Lee, for coming on the show tonight. Unfortunately, we're coming down to the end, and it feels like we just got started. Anyways, everybody, the name of Lee's book is A Visionary Guide to Lucid Dreaming Methods for Working with the Deep Dream State. Some great techniques and methods to use here, everybody. Great book. So, Lee, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. Oh, yeah, it was a pleasure. And, I hope people, if they have more questions or anything, they can reach out to me. I'm very open, very willing to talk to people for hours on end. So if anybody wants to do that, I'm open.
Well, that's very, very generous. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody is now inspired to pay more attention to your dreaming mind and get into this lucid dreaming. It is just the coolest thing. So we'll be back next week, everybody, with another great show. And until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural.